Okay, let's start with this small question I have here that generally we found this that parents' calculations about many experiences are different with their child. Means when we are amateurs or child, whatever we think the world look like and the whatever the parents' perceptions is about everything is totally different. So sometimes we found that why our parents are not thinking like us. Similarly, when we do this in statistics, many times our sample results won't match with the ideal world or the population results or whatever we think will never be found in our sample study. So why this happens? And the one question with which I left all of you last time was that how this district stat is connected with the hypothesis testing. From where these hypothesis testing come in the picture, why we use these distributions, and how we use these tabulated values of distributions, who calculated these values. So I hope you all have tried to do it. So if one by one, if you want to say what solutions you find, that why our descriptive stat, how it's connected with the distributions. That was my first question last time, that how this descriptive stat, whatever we done, mean, median, mode, and all these, how these are connected with the distributions like Z, D, F. So any of you tried, then please try to answer. That what do you think that how these things are interrelated, and who gave us these distributions like Z distribution, how they calculated the values? Anyone want to try to answer these? Anyone try to solve it or try to study these about this, or none of you had tried? Okay, the binomial distribution first interview the more wanted a shortcut to calculate probability or 60 or more Liberius and number of heads essentially follows a binomial distribution. Try to using binomial distribution, which then could give the probability value. Yes, if we are true. Anyone else? Why these? How these are connected with our descriptive stats? Yes, if we are true. I'll come to this. That Demo Ray did it. He tried to find some equation which can give us this standard normal curve, and he did this. Yeah, that's true. So they want to test if values observed descriptive state is by chance or not nearby the population values or not. Yeah, true, Divya. Anyone else, or all of you got this point? Okay, let's start with it. That in the first slide itself, I had made this point that generally our descriptive stats, whatever last time we studied about the categorical and quantitative variables, that we do calculation based upon the sample studies. So the main thing is that how we generalize about these sample six about the population. Do we rely on these calculations or whatever numbers we have, or uh, they are not equal to the population? So how we rely on these numbers? So to do that, we need some parameters with which we can compare our sampled calculated results, and then we can take some decision whether we rely on these calculations or not. This was the challenge behind the statistics, that how they do this. So this particular story took a long time. We need, the problem is that One, we need some particular statistics with which we can compare our sample calculated results. The second thing, it's not possible that your calculated results will accurately match with the population result. So we need some range in which we can see whether our results are lying or not. And this range nowadays we call it a confidence interval, or the acceptance region, or the rejection region, or the critical region. All these terms we use in the hypothesis testing. These are actually the range that we have to need to rely upon whether our whatever calculated results have in the sample are nearby the population results or not. We give us some range, and for range we need some parameters. So that parameters we will study in the hypothesis testing. So this start with it's actually before the Galileo, when astronomers are trying to calculate the accurate measures about the astronomy. So Galileo found this particular three observations in his experiment, that there is only one number which gives the distance of the star from the center of the Earth, the true distance. All observations are encumbered with errors due to observer, the instruments, and the other observational conditions. Means this error is very important, that generally we all study in the regression the error term, and econometrics is, if I can say, this is all about the error term, right? How this error term is distributed. Similarly, these astronomers finding some errors in their calculations in astronomy. So Galileo said there are errors, and they might be because of the instruments, like when we do a sampling, that might be because of your sampling bias or the methodology you adopt. Similarly, in the astronomy, they find there are errors, but the main finding is that these observations are distributed symmetrically about the true value. Means whatever errors are there, they are not one-sided, they are symmetrically distributed. And another finding found that small errors occurs more frequently than the large numbers. And from here, this astronomy, this error thing started, that how accurate we calculate these as errors. Similarly, in the physics, these things are very important, that we can't tolerate the errors. So this I have took from the research paper, The Evolution of Normal Distribution by Sol Stahl. And here he described this history of the normal distribution, that how we reached to the history of this normal distribution. Later on, other mathematicians, they did these experiments, and Gauss, because we always, many books you find this a Gaussian distribution, this normal curve. So Gauss also tried to work it out, and he found that small errors are more likely than large errors. But his here what get this 1999 time period is actually 1700 something. He started 1600 something when Galileo found these findings. So this normal distribution has a history of more than 300 years, and right now we are using it more frequently. But at least I want to discuss it with you, because these, if I say discoveries or calculations, they were really useful for our statistical calculations. And most of the contributions at that time period, these astronomers have provided these kind of distributions. So later on, Laplace, or the Galton, Francis Galton, in internet, on YouTube, and many places, you found this Galton board. The Galton board will show you that how things are normally distributed. And Francis Galton also tried to explain it theoretically with the social science, with the example of height, that if you take a height, then the taller parents, if the father is taller, then his child height is less than the father. And if we take the small height case, average heights of the child are more than the father. So things are going to merge, like we use in the regression, that regression line is about the mean. So that mean that social science, these things were everywhere, you found these things are normally distributed. This thing Francis Galton explained with the Galton board. That Galton board, if you want to see, this were what he did. I can't explain all this about that, but he described that things are normally distributed. But before that, as Divya explained, that yes, in the beginning, in about 730, Abraham de Moivre wrestled with the problem of finding the function that approximates the standardized binomial histogram. Bernoulli give the this binomial distribution. In probability, we have binomial distribution we use in case of discrete variables, discrete random variables. But later on, we found that if the sample size will increase, or if events are like that, where the probability of success is nearby 0.5, their binomial distributions are just look like the normal distributions. So Abraham de Moivre tried to find this particular function which approximate the standardized binomial distribution, and that's actually we use as a standard normal curve these days. So although I don't find any literature that exact literature that to whom we call this that this de Moivre gave this the standard normal curve, or here if you see in many such papers, Laplace and Gaussian contributions, many highlighted that Laplace and Gaussian did this individually. They try to work out this normal curve, but in many literature, many statistical books, I have read that actually after the binomial distribution, De Moivre tried to find this function, and he did this experiment and he found this standard normal curve, and this particular equation nowadays we use in to calculate a probability in case of a continuous variable. We call it standardized normal density function. So this is the, if you see the time period, it took a 200 and 300 years to reach this particular conclusion. But in statistics, our concern is that how we are getting anything from it, means how helpful it is for our purpose. So to understand that, let's start with the random variables. To understand it, we have to understand the process of distributions, probability distributions. So as you know that random variable, generally when we have a random outcomes, we can't predict that, okay, this is the particular outcome. Outcomes are random. Here the few examples are given that if you count the number of employees absent from the day shift on Monday, the number might be 0. The number absent is random variable. If we weigh 4 steel ingots, the weights might be 2492 pounds, 2497 pounds, 25067 pounds, and so on. These are just examples of the random variables. And these probability distributions are generally about the random variables. If I go back again to this Galileo thing, that errors, all observations are encumbered with errors due to observer, the instruments, and the other observational conditions, and these errors are symmetrically distributed. It's only possible if we have a random variables. If we don't have a random variables, if they are biased or something, then it's not possible that we will get some symmetrical results for the errors. Similarly, in the probability distributions, normal distribution only possible when we have random variables, random discrete variables and random continuous variables. Now, as we studied with the in case of the quantitative variables, there are two types of variables, discrete and continuous. Similarly, in the probability distributions, it's divided accordingly. For discrete, we have a separate distributions, and for continuous random variables, we have a separate distributions. So here I take another example. In the case of continuous generally where we measure something in between some particular range, because exact measurement or the discrete value is not possible. For example, the times of commercial flights between Atlanta and Los Angeles are 4.6 hours, 5.13 hours, and so on. The random variable is the number of hours, or the height and weight. Any other example you can take where we can measure only between the range, but one particular outcome is not possible. So let's first start with the discrete. First, we have a random variable. Within a random variable, we have two types of variables, discrete and continuous. It's the same like we studied in the descriptive statistics. Now, within a discrete random variables, we have two distributions. there are many number of distributions, but in generally the distribution we studied uniform distribution and binomial distribution. Means within a discrete probability distribution, and discrete probability distribution is about the discrete random variable. Now, why we are studying this distribution, that I'll answer this question in the end, that why there was a need of this particular distribution. But if, as a hint, if I'll give you, in this particular case, yes, to match our sample statistical results, we need a parameter, and with a parameter, we need a particular range. And this range we will get from the distributions. That's the reason that we study this distribution. These distributions provide us the range that we call this acceptance region and rejection region. And this acceptance and rejection is all about your sample statistic results and the population results. Whether you will accept your sample results or you reject, they are statistically significant or statistically insignificant. For that, we need at least some parameter with some specific range. So what will be the parameter that I will describe later on, but how that parameter is calculated and how that range is calculated, to understand that we have to go through the distributions. And distributions depend upon the nature of the variable. So in the first case, when we have a random discrete variable, in this particular case, in statistics, we generally study two types of distributions. One is uniform distribution, another is the binomial distribution. This is case of discrete probability distributions. Uniform, how we define now uniform distribution? Uniform distribution, if this image is clear, this is, let's take for example, the case of dice. The chances of outcome of this 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they are equally likely, right? Means they are uniformly divided. So this is the one case of uniform distribution. In uniform distribution, the possible values are equal likely. There is no distribution of well-shaped or normal or any other type. It's an equal likely case. So if you have this particular case of uniform distribution of discrete variables, then these are the general methods. We calculate the mean and the variance. Now, the question comes here that why this mean and how, from where this mean and variance is coming from. Then again, you have to go back to your question. In descriptive statistics, what parameters you have calculated? To describe all the observations, we calculated few central values, right? Like mean, median, and mode and all. And with the mean and median, we have the variances for their dispersion measures. For mean, we have a standard deviation. For median, we have an interquartile range. Although if you go through the statistical nature, more or less all the distributions are designed according to mean. That's also an important question, that why all the distributions are calculated around the mean, not the median. You won't find any distributions which calculated around the mean. Means all this exercise and the function discoveries, they did this in this statistical literature. They tried to did it with the nearby average values, and for average they selected the arithmetic mean. That's the reason in all the distributions, Poisson distribution, binomial distribution, uniform distribution, binomial distribution, continuous probability distribution, standard normal curve, these all distributions are about mean and variance, standard deviation. So now you have calculated, let's suppose, mean from the sample results. So you need one particular value to compare with the population, right? So if we have calculated the mean of the sample, then definitely we need the mean of the population. But if it's possible to calculate the mean of the population, then why we do a sample studies? So definitely it means we don't have a population means. It's not the always case that if you are doing some particular study on specific parameters on a specific geographical location only, then you might have a population parameters. But in generally, we don't have this freedom or leverage to do exercise with the population. So how we compare these results means what parameters we follow for the population. So to do that, they did this calculations based upon the distributions, and from distributions they try to get the probability mean values for the expected mean values for the population and their variances. But there are n number of distributions and n number of mean and variance value. So which specific value we will calculate and compare, so that you can understand after all these distributions. So first I am starting with the normal this discrete distribution. Let's take one example. The John sells new cars for Pelican Ford. John usually sells this is just to illustrate this how we can understand that these are the discrete distribution, how we identify the binomial distributions, how we identify the continuous probability distributions. These examples I am just illustrating so that you can get some idea that how we differentiate these distributions. And in hypothesis testing, when we use any particular distribution, why we are using that particular distribution, because this random variable, the nature of the variable, accordingly we have the distributions. This is the case. Now let's suppose these are the probabilities of number of cars sold for this particular individual. For 0, only 10% of the chances that he or she will sell 0 car on a Saturday. He is going to sell 1 car, the probability is 20%, 2 cars 30%, for 3 cars 30%, and for 4 cars 10%. So we have a specific probability for a specific particular number. So it's a case of discrete variable. Now it's not an equal likely case. You can also take the example of dice. The chances are equal likely, right? 1 by 6, 1 by 1 by 6. So these are the just type of the discrete probability distribution. So let's see this particular distribution. Now, what type of distribution is this? This is a discrete probability distribution for random variable called number of cars sold, that John expects to sell only within a certain range of cars. He does not expect to sell 5 cars or 50 cars. Further, he cannot sell half a car. He has specific numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a case of discrete. Now, what is more important in the distributions? Since we have done this descriptive stat mean and standard deviation as a measure of a descriptive stat for this continuous variables, sorry, this quantitative variables, both for continuous and discrete variables. So we also need some mean and variance about the distributions so that we can compare our results later on in the hypothesis testing. So how we calculate mean in the discrete probability distribution? This is the formula. Summation all the particular x values multiply with their respective probabilities. If you multiply it and do the summation, that's the mean of the particular probability distribution. It's a case of discrete probability distribution. How we calculate the variance? For variance, you have to first subtract the population mean or the mean, whatever you have calculated for the particular distribution. Let's suppose this is a case of population, so we describe it with the mu, although mu we only use in statistics when you have population case. It is same like we did in the descriptive stat. Then square, otherwise its summation gets 0, and you have to multiply it with the respective probability. In this simple descriptive stat, if it's not a case of probability, we divide with the n. Here we are multiplying with the probability, because when we calculate these probabilities like this 10%, 20%, 30%, what it means? It means actually number of favorable outcomes divided by total number of all possible outcomes. So all possible outcomes are the n. So we already divided with the n while we calculate the individual probability. So we are not going to divide with the n in both the cases, in the calculation of mean and in the calculation of variances. That's the reason instead of dividing with the mean, here we multiply it with the probability, because while we calculate these probabilities, we already divided with the n. So this is the simple formula for mean in case of the discrete probability distribution and for the variance. So let's suppose this in this particular case we have a mean of 2.10 and variance 1.290. So what this particular mean interpret that 2.1? Here in this example they are saying that over a large number of Saturdays, John expects to sell a mean of 2.1 cars a day. So 2.1 car we have to approximate to around a rounding figure. So it means on an average, we expect that this particular individual will sell 2 cars. Probability distributions are in the expected, right? We are expecting something. So on an average, we can expect that this particular individual will sell two cars on a Saturday. But it's not always the case, right? Here if we see he's also selling 3 cars, 4 cars, 0, 1. So that's the reason we need a dispersion. We need some particular range. Means it's not always the case that on every Saturday he is going to sell 2 cars. No, it might be 0, it might be a 4. So we definitely need a one particular dispersion. And as we studied in the descriptive stats, for mean the dispersion measure is variance or the standard deviation. So that's the reason we have to calculate the variance and the standard deviation. And if I'll just give you a hint, in the normal distribution, this Z curve, we define it with the mean and standard deviation. And these are the distributions which we define with the mean and standard deviation. This is the property of these distributions. So we need a range and one particular central value. So this is the case of simple discrete probability distribution. If I'll go the next case of the binomial probability distribution. Now, binomial probability distributions are different from simple discrete probability distributions in the sense that this is one specific property in case of binomial distribution. Their outcomes are only two. And there are only two possible outcomes. Interpretation, okay. This is same like we do in the descriptive stat, the interpretation for the average, that on an average we are going to, in this particular case, on an average, this particular going to sell 2 cars. But here we use the term expectations because probability we always do with the expected values. But it's not always be the case, so we need some dispersion measure that how much is the dispersion in this particular case. So for that we have a variance. So variance is like 1.290, right? That 2 is the on an average, okay, but there are chances of discrepancies. And in this particular case, so variance we never used, as I described in the descriptive stat. In place of variance, we use standard deviation. So if you calculate the standard deviation of this particular variance, I think it might come around 1.36 or something. So that's the measure of dispersion for this particular situation. So we are defining particular probability distribution with the mean and variance. This mean and variance again our descriptive measure, but now we have a case of the distribution. Earlier we generally have a case of the sample data, whatever observations you have, you are defining that with the one particular central value and dispersion. Similarly, just take example that here we are defining probability distribution with the mean and the variance. Next distribution we have in case of discrete probability distributions. Always just keep in mind we have this particular thing in a question which we are trying to get an answer. It is not about the distributions this particular class. What we need that we did calculate some calculation based upon the sample. What we need a one particular population parameter and its range to compare our results so that we can decide whether our sample results are significant or not. And to get this result, we have to go through these distributions. So first was the case of simple uniform distribution. Then you have a case of binomial distribution. how you define the binomial distribution, what is the special particular thing about it. Here there are only two possible outcomes, either a success or the failure. If you have this kind of outcome, it has this particular nature that either it will happen or not, success and failure, then you have a case of binomial distribution. And for binomial distribution, as we know that mean and variance formulas are different. In case of binomial distribution, we can't calculate probabilities in this particular manner. Like in this particular case, the formula for probability is number of favorable outcomes divided by total number of all possible outcomes. But in this particular, like in this particular case, that 0, the total car he might have sold 10 cars. So this is, here you have calculated the particular probability for this particular situation. But here, in case of binomial distribution, the method is totally different. Bernoulli gives this particular thing, and this particular Bernoulli method, we also do it in, I think, extrapolation, interpolation and extrapolation. Also, we use this particular Bernoulli distribution, Bernoulli, this particular equation. Similarly, in the probability distributions, if our outcomes are like success and failure, means we only have two possible outcomes. And if our trials are independent, these are the characteristics or the properties which we have if we have a binomial distribution. And you can identify with these characteristics that particular situation is of the binomial distribution or not. And these are the same formulas. And here is the number of trials, and the P is the probability of success and Q is the probability of failure. And as we use this particular equation for a binomial distribution, number of trials, X is the number of success desired, probability of getting a success in one trial, and Q is the probability of getting a failure in one trial. Just take one numerical example. There are 5 flights daily from Pittsburgh via US Airways into Bradford, Pennsylvania Regional Airport. Suppose the probability that any flight arrive late is 20%. What is the probability that none of the flights are late today? And what is the probability that exactly one of the flights is late today? This is just to give you an example of the binomial distribution. Now, first thing you have to identify whether it's a binomial distribution. Here's the case of success and failure, means either it's late or not. So first characteristic is here. There are only two possible outcomes. Second, the probability of success. Probability of success, we here not 20%. And 1 minus probability of success is the probability of failure, that's 80%. Another thing is required, the trials are independent. Now these flights are independent, right? Means the second flight is going to be late or not, it won't depend upon the third flight or the first flight. This is case of an independent trials. And the last thing, the random variable counts the number of success in fixed number of trials. We can count these things, so that's also met here. This is a case of binomial distribution. So for binomial distribution, we have to use this combination formula, and combination X. This pi is here, means the probability of success, it's the P, and 1 minus P is a Q. So suppose first case is, what is the probability that none of the flights are late today? Means the probability of 0, X is a 0. So if we didn't do this calculation based upon the combination formula, we'll get a probability of approximately 0.3277. Second was the case of exactly one flight. So P, the X value is 1. Again, if we solve this by a combination formula, you will get a 0.40. And so on. For 2, 3, 4, we have n5. So up to 5, you can calculate these probabilities based upon binomial distribution. Now this is the table for 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for all the cases. And these are the probabilities. And as we know, in the case of distributions, the sum of the probabilities is equal to 1. So if we plot this particular distribution on one particular graphical scale, it will look like this particular descriptive measure, graphical measure. You can see this is a case of descriptive measures. We have one specific probability for one specific outcome or the one specific particular trial or event in sorry, only the outcome 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are the outcome, and this is a case here that 0 is when no flight is delayed, then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So these are the outcomes, and their respective probabilities we have calculated based upon this particular binomial distribution formula, Bernoulli distribution. So this is how we calculate probability in case of a binomial distribution. Yes, trials are independent means one, like in this particular case, whether this third flight is going to be late or not, it won't depend upon the second flight or the fourth flight. So these are independent, and it's mandatory in these characteristics are mandatory. Otherwise, we can't apply this binomial distribution method. But again, it's a case of discrete distribution because our random variable is still discrete. So what happened that, as Divya also explained, that this particular astronomer, if I am not wrong, this Abraham de Moray tried to find a function that approximates the standardized binomial histogram from a case of p is equal to 50. 50 means when the chances of success are 50%. And this particular case is exactly look like a normal curve. Moray tried to find this particular function for binomial distribution. Early, it is not started with the continuous distribution. This experiment of normal distribution started with the discrete random variable and case of a binomial distribution. So standardized mean what we call standardized generally the unit-free measures. We have many unit-free measures, but in this particular hypothesis testing and distribution, we study this standardized normal procedure where you subtract all the particular observation with the respective mean and you divide it with the standard deviation. So Moray tried to do it this particular exercise. He did it and he get a one particular function which at that time they called standardized binomial histogram. And what they found, that was exactly look like the normal curve. So from there, in many books, we found that we give this particular credit to the Moray for this standard normal curve. But this experiment, you have to note it down that this experiment was in case So in case of discrete random variable, Moray found this particular curve based upon the binomial distribution, and that was exactly like the normal curve. And in statistical literature and chapters, you find this particular thing that if you have a large sample size, if your n is large, then binomial distribution look like a normal distribution. So that's what exactly this Moray did it, and later on he found this particular function, and that we call a standard normal curve. But this is a case of discrete probability distributions. Similarly, like here we are doing the calculations manually. Now keep in mind at that particular time we don't have this computers and all. So if n is large, here we have a n of 5, right? You can do this factor of 5 easily. But let's suppose this n is 5 lakh, then your calculation is not easy. So to do that, at that time what they calculated this particular binomial distribution tables. You might find this in your textbooks in the appendix. From these tables, you can directly calculate these binomial probabilities. These tables are based upon the sample size, n, and x, whatever outcomes you're looking, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and based upon the probability of success. like for example, if your probability of success is 5%, 50%, 60%, based upon these values, you can calculate any particular value for particular outcome in the process of binomial distribution with the binomial distribution tables. But these tables are too lengthy because when n is going to increase 6, 1000 and all, then you have to see how you can get these probabilities. This is how at those days they were trying to do a work with this binomial distribution. And the more interesting find, I think this Moray tried to do this it for these calculations, not for the social sciences or the physical sciences. If I am not wrong, Moray tried to do these experiments for the gamblers actually. That what are the chances of winning and losing on those days, and for these things he tried to do this particular thing. Although this Galileo and all, they were doing these experiments for astronomy, means they need a precise estimations, but Moray actually was more interested at that particular time in the gambling things, that how these things, and he tried to find these curves. And in the gambling and all, because that case was of the discrete probability distribution, that chances of winning and losing was there, and you can calculate one describe, but we have particular single number, discrete number. So he found this particular very interesting thing, that standardized binomial histogram, and that was exactly look like the standard normal curve. And he discovered this particular function. So that was the just a story up to the discrete random variables. But as we studied, we do not only have a case of discrete random variables, we also have a continuous random variables. Similarly, we have a Poisson distribution. I'm not going to in detail about the Poisson distribution. The reason is in this distributions, in hypothesis testing, generally we never use this Poisson distribution, right? So most of the distributions depend upon Z, T, F, chi-square, and they are interlinked with the binomial distribution or the standard normal distribution. So this is how from the binomial distribution we reach to the standard normal curve. But that standard normal curve, the Moray discovered, is about the standardized binomial histogram. That's not about the continuous. I don't have this idea. Moray did it for the continuous variables also or not, but whatever knowledge I have, although I'm not a master's in statistics or in bachelor's, but whatever knowledge I have, whatever I had studied, Moray did it for the discrete random variables, and binomial is the case of discrete, so that was the case at that time. That might be a reason that in many textbooks you find that they give this credit of standard normal curve to the Gauss and Laplace, because they did this experiment with the continuous random variable. So never get confused that if you find that it's a Gaussian distribution or it's a Moray standard normal curve, it's only actually the differences of the discrete random variable and continuous random variable. So next, we have a continuous random variables. Like we have this discrete variables and we have a continuous random variables. In case of continuous random variables, now here this total all the things is all about the normal curves. It started. Now first, how we define the continuous distribution. Now just take an example. Yes, now again, in the this particular discrete random variable, we generally have uniform distribution, binomial distribution, and nowadays we also study Poisson distribution. But Poisson distribution is for rare events, right? And something in between the range, so not range, in the proportions, that particular event or outcome is out of one particular range or interval, then we use a Poisson distribution about the rare cases only. But in generally, we want to use that in a hypothesis testing case. In your continuous random variable, first we again have a two kind of situations. One, uniform probability distributions, normal probability distributions. Now these two distributions are totally different. We define probability with the uniform probability distribution when your continuous variable is of the nature of particular range. For example, suppose the time to access a Macro Hill web page is uniformly distributed with a minimum time of 20 milliseconds and maximum time of 60 milliseconds. If you have a case of interval, this particular case of intervals, and if they are uniformly divided, then we have to use this particular uniform probability distribution. Otherwise, we have to use normal probability distribution. Now, I'll give you one few examples so that you can get some difference. In case of this particular uniform distribution, you have an equal outcome, possible outcome, as I showed in the discrete case also. But here we calculate the mean and variance with the area methods. Like here the function of 1 upon b minus a. B is the maximum limit, a is the lower limit. And if you want to calculate this particular probability, then you have to use this based upon the area methods. It's totally different from the simple normal distribution. Just take an example. This example I had took from the textbook. So let's do it with the textbook. This textbook I already shared with all of you. But this particular case of uniform probability distribution of continuous. Uniform is also in the case of discrete and also in the continuous. This is particular case, Southwest Arizona State University. Please ask any doubt anytime if you have a doubt. Means I am continuously trying to explain the things, but if you are doing first time, I can understand I'm jumping many things here. I mean, I'm not doing it intensively, that binomial calculation, then normal calculation, then discrete calculations. The reason is that we have a very short duration, and my purpose is to link your applied part with the theory part, that whatever we do in the applied part, not only, it's not important that you can understand the process of Stata only. You can do it in Stata, SPSS, or whatever software. That command thing is not important to learn. More than that, the important thing is to understand why you do those things, and to understand that you have to need some knowledge about behind that. Although I'm aware of the fact that you all have done this in the bachelor's and the master's, and might be in the PhD coursework. But the thing is that whether you studied in this particular format or not, you didn't. I'm aware that everywhere this is in the syllabus: normal distributions, binomial distributions, Poisson distributions. They remain numerical questions. But in final examinations, maximum time they ask you the numerical questions, right? How we calculate a probability in case of binomial, normal, continuous, and all. But while we do a research, that's not important. The important thing is why we are doing that particular thing the first time. And that's the main thing that I found is lacking behind in our teaching methods in colleges and universities. We will not putting a focus on those things. We just put all the strength and energy on the calculation part. That you can do with the software, but first I just try to understand why we are using those particular tools. Okay, so I'll come back to this uniform distribution. Let's just try to understand why it's a case of uniform distribution. In this particular example, let me zoom in. Southwest Arizona State University, or if I'll show you once again this particular, if it's here, yeah. The distributions describe the likelihood that continuous random variable within an infinite number of possible values will fall within a specific range or not. Suppose the time to assess Macro Hill, then we can determine the probability the page can be assessed in 30 milliseconds or less. The assessed time is measured on a continuous scale. The second continuous distribution is normal probability distribution. Normal distribution is described by its mean and standard deviation. This is the basic difference between uniform distribution and normal probability distribution. If you have a case of normal probability distribution, then you define it with the mean and variance. As we are described that mean and variance, they described about the normal distribution with the 0 mean and 1 variance. Means if you have a normal distribution of a continuous variable case, the distribution we define with mean and variance. But not in case of uniform distribution. In uniform distribution, you define with this particular interval. If I will take this example, this is about this particular interval. And what is the interval here? Now let's take this example. Southwest Arizona State University provides bus services to students while they are on campus. A bus arrives at a North Main Street and college drive stop every 30 minutes between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. During weekdays, students arrive at the bus stop at random times. The time that a student waits is uniformly distributed from 0 to 30 minutes. So here is the case of range, right? 0 to 30 minutes. So this is the case of uniform distribution. Draw a graph of this distribution, 0 to 30 minutes. So that the area of this uniform distribution is 1. If we calculate this total area, then it's like the probability it's going to be a 1. Now we will do this one by one. First, in this case, the random variable is the length of a time student must wait. Now it's a case of length range, right? That's a case of continuous variable. It's not a discrete. We don't have a specific number. Time is measured on a continuous scale, and the wait times may range from 0 to 30 minutes. So now here we are not defining it with the mean and variance. We are defining it with the particular interval. So it's a case of uniform distribution. And how we calculate this particular probability? In case of this particular uniform distribution, these are the methods. 1 upon b minus a. In this particular case, the maximum value is 30, minimum value is 0. So if you divide 1 by 30 minus 0, you will get the 0.033. This is the probability of this particular thing. And it's equal likely. That's the case of uniform distribution. Second, the time student must wait for the bus is uniform over the interval from 0 to 30 minutes. So in this case, A is 0 and B is 30, as I described. If you need a total area, so as we do in the geometry, height into base is the method to calculate the area. In this particular case, 0 to 30, to calculate the area, the method is this particular formula. If it's visible, let me zoom it. D minus C and B minus A. This is particular to get a particular interval or particular to get a probability or total area, height and base. So this particular situation, we have this particular case, height into base. So the total area is 1. To mean, the formula is A plus B divided by 2. So in this particular way, minimum value is 0, that's A. Maximum value is 30, that's the value of B, divided by 2. Then you will calculate the mean. This is just I'm trying to explain you that how to calculate the mean and variances, because generally we define distributions with the mean and variances. In discrete, we have a separate formulas. In case of continuous, we have a separate formula. Again, if you have a uniform distribution, just let me revise you, because many times we lost the track, because in one single class we have many distributions, so you might lose the track. So just to revise that, but exactly where we have reached so far. If you have a case of distribution, yeah, if you have a case of random variable, you have two cases, right? Discrete and continuous. In a discrete, there are two type distributions. Generally, we study uniform distribution, binomial distribution. In simple uniform distributions or simple normal distributions, in case of discrete, our mean and variances we calculate in this particular format that we do in general in the descriptive stat also. Only the differences of the expected values. If you have a case of binomial distribution, then this is the method to calculate the probability. How you define the binomial distribution? From these characteristics. If we have a continuous random variable, Then again, we have a two type of distributions: uniform probability distributions, normal probability distributions. Although there are other many type of distributions: T distribution, F distribution, chi-square distributions, but which study generally before the standard normal curve. That's only I am going to describe in this particular class, because our purpose is to find a parameter with which we can compare our sample results and the range for that particular parameter, so that we can decide whether we have to accept our sample results or not. Or in statistical terms, we will say whether our sample calculator statistics are statistically significant or insignificant. This is all about the inference statistics, right? So if you have a uniform probability distribution, then this is the way we calculate mean and variance. You might have done this in your classroom, so I'm not going to do it in calculation details. Although if you want to see, then this is the example. Here they did it. Mean they calculated. Mean in this case is 15. And for variance, this is the formula. 8.6 is the value. If you want to calculate a probability for particular interval, and this is the method you have to use. Height into base of that particular interval. So you will get a probability of base. Because in discrete, we have a specific probability, but in continuous case, we always have probability for particular range. So this is the way you can go through your book. I already shared this textbook. If you are more interested in this calculation, right now my focus is that how we get population parameters. So to understand that, I'm trying to describe you the nature of distributions. This was the case of uniform distribution, but we don't always have the uniform distributions, right? That's not the case that we always have equal likely cases for all the outcomes. Now, another most important continuous distribution is the normal distribution that we call. In case of normal distribution, we generally use these particular methods. So this is a case of Z. Z is generally our standard normal curve. Although this is not the way we calculate simple probability in the case of normal distribution, we have this particular typical formula. Let me show you if I have this in particular PPTs or not. Yeah, this formula. 1/2 pi exponential raised to power mean and range and divide by. Kelton and Gauss started with this particular, and then later on we have the typical formula that we use generally in the normal distribution. If you want to calculate a probability in case of continuous random variable, you can use that particular formula. So first, just understand this distribution is totally different. In binomial distribution, you have values on any particular edge. Unless you have a probability of success is nearby 50%, otherwise it won't look like the normal distribution. In case of continuous random variables, the distributions their density functions look like this particular case. Now, the only problems what the statisticians found that how we will get some parameters to compare if we have this particular situation. So if we have a n number of sample size, so we need a n number of this continuous normal density functions to compare our results. So that was the difficulty they were facing. So what shortcut they found is that why not we try to find one particular distribution which we can compare all the time. And that's the actually beauty of this standard normal curve. This particular standard normal curve. Yeah, this particular function. Now you can see the difference here. Here we are trying to get the probability based upon mean and variance. That's what they have discovered in this case, that if you have a normal probability distribution we defined with mean and variance. It's not case of interval of equal likely like uniform distribution. Here we have to calculate the probabilities based upon mean and variances. So what it means? It means before calculating any probability, you need value of mean and variance of that particular distribution. Now, it is not the case, or is it the case of discrete also? Let me go back. When we have this normal distribution. Yes, again here. You can calculate the variance only if you have a mean. Without mean, it's not possible. And you can first calculate the mean and then you can calculate the variance. But if you come to this particular continuous distribution, in this case, you don't need mean and variance to calculate the probability. You can calculate mean and variance, but to calculate a particular probability, if you take this particular example, here to calculate the probability, we don't need a mean or variance. I hope you're getting this point. But if you have a normal distribution of continuous variable, to calculate particular probability of particular outcome, first you need a mean and variance of that particular distribution. That's the reason we say that normal distributions we define with mean and variance. I hope this point is clear. If you had doubt, then please ask. If you want to calculate a probability, first thing you required is mean and variance. Other things, so you are just aware of that. This is the pi, this is the exponential, x particular outcome for which you want to calculate the probability. Mu is mean here, and this is the variance, and this is standard deviation, which is just under root of the variance. So first, you need a mean and variance of your distribution. Then only you can calculate the probability if it's the case of normal probability distribution. But this is not the situation in uniform probability distribution. In binomial distribution, what do you need? You need probability of success only, p value, right? If you have this p, probability of success, then you can calculate the probability in case of binomial distribution. In case of discrete, the simple normal distributions, you just need a probability of the outcomes, then you can calculate the mean and probability we calculate in the normal discrete case with the number of favorable outcomes divided by all possible outcomes. That's the simple formula we have to use if we have a case of discrete. But if you have a case of this particular normal probability distribution of a continuous random variable, then to calculate the probability, this is the method, but in this method, you need mean and variance. So this is the case now. The problem here is that we have an n number of distributions, each different with the mean and variance. Let me show you for examples. Yeah, this is the. If your mean is different, this is although this is example I have taken for this explain your center limit theorem, but just try to understand that if your mean is different and variance is different, your distribution is different. And based upon your distribution, you can calculate the probabilities. So first you have to calculate the mean and variance. Means you need to know some idea about your distribution. Then only you can calculate the other probabilities. So what simple solution statisticians and these mathematicians is provided so that our job will get easy. They provided us with the standard normal curve or standard normal density function, their tables, Z tables, so that you can calculate probabilities easily. That's the reason we use Z tables, means in the first hand to calculate the probability. Right now, I'm not going to hypothesis testing, but first just understand the role and importance of these Z tables. Otherwise, what will happen? You have to first calculate your distribution, mean of the distribution, variance of the distribution, then based upon mean and variance of the distribution, then you can calculate the probabilities. And if you have a different sample size or different mean and variance, then you have a different distribution. So that calculation is what typical. So to do it with the ease and to sort out this problem, instead of n number of distributions, now we use one single distribution. And that distribution we use is a standardized normal curve. And that distribution had this particular probability, 0 mean and 1 variance. and we have a z table for all those probability values based upon your this particular probability outcomes and z values. And what are the z values? Z values we calculate. It's here. Let me show you. Yeah, these are the z values, right? Particular value minus mean and variance. So you calculate the z value. What you need? You need a mean and variance. And based upon a z value, you can calculate the probability. Now, this is a case of continuous random variable, so we don't have a specific probability. We always calculate probability of particular range, and that we calculate with the area under the curve, right? We use this particular technique, area under the curve. In your classrooms, I don't think you ever use this particular formula to calculate the probability in case of continuous random variable standard normal curve. In place of it, what we always used, area under the curve, and that area under the curve is based upon the z table, right? And that z table is all about the standardized method. And what is that standardized method? The standardized method is you subtract the value from the mean, divide with the variance. And this particular distribution is the property of zero mean and one variance. So now in place of n distributions, we have a one specific distribution which we can use in any particular situation. What was the requirement? That first, before using that distribution, you have to do this exercise for all your x outcomes, right? If you remember your text, your classrooms, then you can understand that in case of this particular distribution, first exercise we do is we subtract all the values. We take a difference from the mean and divide it with the standard deviation, and for these z values we calculate area under the curve. So this is the method by which we calculate probabilities for a continuous random variable normal probability distribution. So this is the role of z, actual role of this z tables. This is just a small example I have given you there. Let's suppose if you have this particular situation where your z value is 1.8 and you want to calculate the probability up to this particular value, 1.80 of that, then you can directly look upon the table and you will get this particular value, that how much area that will cover. Total area is 1. I hope you all remember this particular procedure, area under the curve, how you calculate the probabilities. But what I was trying to highlight is that why we use these z tables, because otherwise you have to use these formulas, and for these formulas with all the different samples and groups of the population, you have a different mean and variance. So it means you have a different distribution table. So you have again and again you have to calculate the probability. So to get this job done by easy method, they provided us a one single distribution, that is standardized normal curve. It's unit free, so you can use with any type of data. Only the requirement is first calculate the z values, and for z values you can directly calculate the probabilities from the z table. So that was the major use of this z distribution table. And these z values, from where they calculated, these z values are calculated from this particular probability distribution where mean value is 0 and variance is 1. So their calculations was easy. They calculated all these z values, and from our textbooks we use these z tables to calculate probabilities for area under the curve for standard normal distributions. So if it's clear up to this point, then I'll come to next point. Or any doubt? Or you want me to just revise it once again, that what exactly we are doing? That was the one of my question last time I gave you, that why we use these z tables, right? And from where these z tables are coming. Now the history, as we explained, that Moray tried to do it with the binomial, then later on in the 1800 something, this Laplace and Gaussian and Galton, they did this with the continuous random variables, and we reached to this particular equation. And nowadays, and later on, we started using this particular equation. And later on, they discovered this, that things are normally distributed. Galton provided this example with the Galton board that was so much popular at those days, Galton board, and illustrated the social science phenomena about the height of the individuals, that how it's normally distributed. Things are normally distributed, so they try to find this particular thing, that how we deal with it, so how we find this particular. So we reached up to this particular thing, and it took a 200-300 years, right? In our masters and bachelor, we used it, right? We used the Z table. We did the probabilities. We calculated the area under the curve. You might have done 30-40 number of numericals in your classrooms. You spend a weeks or months to do these calculations. But the thing, please remember it, it took a 200 and 300 years to reach this particular Z tables. And they were useful. If they are not, then it was typical to calculate the probability. Means simple graduate and postgraduate students can't use these distributions in their hypothesis testings and in various other purposes. So the next thing, when they did it later on, now I'll come back to my important first question. But we need a population parameter, right? So did we got with it, or we need something else? It's okay, we have a Z distribution. We have a, the distribution is defined with the mean and variance. We have a parameter there. So can we use that parameter to compare our sample results? Means now we have one distribution, right? Standard normal distribution. We have its mean value, we have its variance and all. And this particular distribution has these characteristics. You will are aware of this. If I have this example. Yeah, this particular distribution has these properties. That's plus minus 1 standard deviation covers 60% of the area. 2 plus minus standard deviation with the mean covers 95% of the area, and 3 plus minus standard deviation from the mean cover 99.7% area. We always study these properties, right? Now I'll come later on how important these properties are. Now I'm asking the question. Now we have a Z table, right? We have one particular distribution which can give us the this particular 0 mean and 1 variance, right? So we have some population parameter. So can we now compare our sample results with this population parameter, or do we need something more? I hope you got my question. Anyone? See, in masters, you all have done this. You did these calculations. Binomial distribution, Poisson distribution, normal distribution, simple probability, probability of mutually exclusive cases, probability of independent cases, dependent cases, permutation, combination, uniform distributions, chi-square distribution, F distributions. Now, why we studied these distributions? The thing was, we did the calculation based upon sample, and we need a one particular parameter based upon the population. So I'm asking, so far we reached up to the Z table. I told you that why Z is important, how we reached up to the Z. It took us 200-300 years. Nowadays, we are using it frequently in graduation, everywhere in hypothesis testing. So I'm asking, did we get this particular population parameter, or we need something more, or we are still in the process? Anyone? Let me see who is present today. Anyone? Okay. We have Divya, Gagan, Naz ma'am, Nimisha, Pallavi, Prerna. Rima. Anyone? I hope you are not sleeping or you are not get bored. Just stop me anytime if you are getting bored. Let me discuss anything else so that we can get bored. Logan still okay, sir. Where is didn't get the question. The why didn't get the question. Our problem is we did the sample calculation based the parameters we calculated based upon the sample. To rely on the sample, we need a population parameter. So I'm asking, we have population parameters so far, or still we need something else? So far we reached up to the standard normal curve, Z table. That you compare in the hypothesis, right? Testing, right? Always you compare that Z, T, or F that depend upon the situation. So we have this particular problem is get resolved, or still something else is required. Gagan is staying in the process. Okay, Gagan. So what do you think where we have? Or what's the next challenge we have and next problem we have in this process? Divya, I hope now you got my question. This is exactly we want to do, Divya, but before that, one important thing I think all of you are missing here is that this particular standard normal curve, if just I can take this today, I'm just taking this case of Z case study, okay? This Z is this property, this particular standard normal curve is this property that it's a normally distributed, right? Means whatever parameters this particular Z distribution will provide us, that's based upon the normal distribution, means it's symmetrical in the shape. So if we want to compare our sample results with this, then don't we need a sample results also normally distributed? Then only we can compare two things, right? Normally distributed thing with the normally distributed thing is if our sample, whatever parameters you have calculated in the sample are not symmetrically or normally distributed, that's the property of the standard normal curve, then we can't compare these results, right? So we need this thing that now the next thing we need is we have to check whether our sample parameters are normally distributed or not. So far up to Z we have done with the population case. Yes, they need to be a same distribution. While you study in the econometrics, this regression OLS technique, you assume this, right? This error terms are normal distribution so that you will use this all hypothesis testing and all this process. But this is not the regression case, right? This is the one particular case of our descriptive stat. For example, case of the mean. So is it that our mean is normally distributed of sample parameters, sample statistics? In regression, we studied this, right? In the OLS in econometrics, you always studies that error term is normally distributed. That's the only we progress further to hypothesis testing and all those things. Means your parameters are normally distributed. You have proved in this econometrics things, but what about the mean in descriptive statistics? Is it normally distributed? If it is, then only we can compare it with the population standardized normal curve distribution. Otherwise, it's not possible to compare it. So what do you think is our mean, whatever parameter we have, normal? And how we know it? Yes, true. It's normally distributed, but how we know it that our sample results are normally distributed? No, 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 Divya. it's not about the we will standardize it and then that's the reason it's normal distributed. No, not even with the Z. You are missing this particular important theorem here that we always study. Center limit theorem. Only the center limit theorem has proved that the sampling distribution of the mean is equal to the mean of the population or this distribution if we have a large sample size. That if all samples of particular size are selected from any population, the sampling distribution of a sample mean is approximately a normal distribution. This is about center limit theorem is about the mean only. And in the ZD distribution, I told you that we reached to this, that these distributions are described with the mean and variance, and they are normally distributed. So we also need the same condition in the sample. But in samples, the center limit theorem has proved it that sampling distribution of the sample mean is approximately a normal distribution. This is not the assumption, this is the center limit theorem who proved, and center limit theorem is given by Laplace. I think in 1800 something or 1900 something, they give the center, if I'm not incorrect about the center limit theorem, time period, no, I don't have the time period here, but I think, yes, 1810. He provided this very important conclusion, and that's the only reason that we have some parameters to compare in hypothesis testing. Not only Gagan 400, no, it's not about 400 or the 500, it's in generally we use the 30, but in many textbooks I have read that the 50 is the case you have to take it. Although they did this experiment with the different distributions and they reached this conclusion based upon the 30 sample size. So let me give you one illustration that, see, if sample size is increasing, if we have a sample size of 2, then our distributions are not normally there are chances of different distributions. In 6, they are more symmetric, but not exactly. But if you see the 30, they are more or less symmetric, right? And their range is going to be an error down. Biasness or the chances of error are less. Actually, this is all about the errors. How errors are distributed in both sides of the distribution. If they are symmetrically distributed, and if the variance is less, that's better the distribution to get some particular conclusions. So they reached up to this particular conclusion that if sample size is 30, and what is the sampling distribution of sample mean? Let me give you one example. Let's suppose we have these observations, these 40 observations of different x values. If we calculate its mean, it's equal to 4.80. That's our this mean of the, let's suppose this is a population, this is the mean of total mean of this particular distribution, that's 40. If we take this is just a hypothetical that 40 is the population. Now if we divide it among different samples, equal samples of 5, now again if we take this means, we had separate values, right? 8.6, 3.8, 1.6, 2.8, they are not 4.8, right? Means whenever we do this study based upon the sample, our sample parameters are always different from the total of the population, whatever in the parameter in the population, because it depends upon the sample size. But if we again take a mean of all these sample means, that's nearby this particular total mean 4.80. If you take a mean of all these sample means, that's 4.6, and it's normally distributed. If you make a distribution of these particular sample means, you will find that it will look like a symmetrical. They means 50% observations are in the right hand side and 50% in the left hand side, and that's the property this particular center limit theorem has proved. And that's the only base we have that now we can compare our sample parameter with the population, because we have proved, like we do in the +2, right hand side equal to left hand side, that sample parameters also have a normal distribution. Population parameters, as we studied with the standard normal curve, is also normal distributions. So now we have a similar things on both the sides, Now we can compare our results in hypothesis testing. And that's the only purpose of today's lecture, that how we use this. This is the final conclusion. If I can give you a hint. Yeah, in hypothesis testing, what you need? One, the parameter you want to compare, another is the range, right? The confidence interval. From where you do this, get this confidence interval? From these properties, right? This your 5% level of significance, 1% of level significance, 90 or 10% level of significance. From where these numbers are coming? These numbers are coming from the standard normal curve probability. That's your 3 plus minus standard deviation from the mean cover 99% of the area. That's the case of 1% level of significance. 2 plus minus standard deviation from the mean cover 95% of area. This is the case of 5% level of significance. Similarly, we use 10%, and this is a trade-off between type 1, type 2 error. All these things we will do tomorrow. Tomorrow we have a hypothesis testing. First, I'll describe process of hypothesis testing. Then I'll describe tomorrow 3 different methods of hypothesis testing: confidence interval approach, level of significance approach, and p-value approach. And Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we will do this different type of hypothesis testing with the Stata software, comparing means, comparing proportions, comparing variances, Z distribution, T distribution, and F distribution. Chi-square I'll do while we do this particular correlation in case of categorical variables. Or maybe tomorrow we can take, on Thursday, Friday, I'll take few illustrations of chi-square also. So this is the now, if I come back to our starting question, that we need some parameters to compare our sample results so that we can take the decisions. Now these parameters are coming from the standard normal curve, and this standard normal curve is of the random variables, discrete and continuous. In a continuous, we have uniform and normal distribution. In normal distribution, we have a n number of distribution based upon mean and variances. But to sort out that, we found a one single distribution with which we can compare. That's the standard normal curve, and that's the reason it's important to understand who gave the standard normal curve, why we use these Z table values. And central limit theorem has proved that your sample parameters are normally distributed if your sample size is sufficiently large. So we can compare our sample results with these calculated probability distribution like Z distribution. So this is the reason we study these distributions before hypothesis testing, and we use these distribution in hypothesis testing. So it's my sincere request, next time, whenever you use hypothesis testing, you do hypothesis testing. Before doing that, just keep in remember that it took us 300 years to reach these conclusions. There are so many problems these statisticians faced, and they spend years and years of their lives to sort out these big puzzles. And nowadays we are using it frequently in all kind of analysis. So I hope you can recognize and give some credit to those statisticians, and always remember them, that how much they struggled. These were not the small puzzles. It took a long time period to get it up to this particular situation. And this give you the freedom that you can do a sample study, and you can describe whatever research question you have. You can find some conclusions, and we can do some this policy making analysis, and we can describe something about the populations. So this thing is not that you can't do these sample studies if central limit theorem is not there. You see, without if let's take this hypothetical situation, let's suppose we don't have a central limit theorem, then you don't have any parameter to compare. You don't have any distribution to compare. So it's not possible that we can take decision based upon your sample size. Then it's just a guess is that it might be wrong, it might be true. So these things give us this freedom and leverage to work upon the samples. Nowadays in PhD, we do a sample studies, right? Even our secondary data is based upon the samples. It's not about the population. but these statistical tools made it possible. Otherwise, it will never be possible that you can use just sample studies and take a decision about the population. So I hope this lecture you find useful. And next time, whenever you do any type of hypothesis testing, must recognize that this is a contribution of hundreds of years of statisticians and mathematicians. And nowadays, we have a software and freedom to use and find some new studies and take some conclusion based upon our research findings. So this is the today's ending. Any question or any doubt? I will find it useful, this particular thing. Although you have already done these things, I'm not saying I'm doing something new in it. I'm just examining with some different manner, which is, I think, more appropriate to recognize this particular contribution. I hope if you become teacher, then whenever you teach these units in your classrooms, you you teach in your own way. I'm not saying you can teach this way, but at least tell students that this is the reason why we study these distributions and how useful these are and how much mathematician, astronomer, statisticians struggle to get resolve these puzzles. Okay, so this is the end today. Tomorrow we will do process of hypothesis testing, different types of doing a hypothesis testing. I'll take few examples, and then from Wednesday we will do this with the Stata software. Okay, thank you so much.